We all got a role to play. You need to take my example. Be a leader. This is our time. No such thing as men's work, women's work anymore. You get just as much right to...
So, this is Louis. I don't know what drove me to watch this show. I think it was a scene that I saw in a YouTube clip, and it just made me curious. If you're not familiar with Fargo, it was like a cult hit a while ago. It had Peter Stormare in it, and it's a movie set in Minnesota, and there's like a campy, cute cult aspect to it. It's like gimmicky. Is it really memorable? Not really. Peter Stormare's good in it. There's some otherwise decent acting. It's gimmicky, but is it really a great movie in my view? No. It's just kind of what it was at the time. And for whatever reason, they based a show on it. So there's a television show that I think is 4 seasons in on FX. And I don't watch television. I don't watch cable. I found this on YouTube. So I watched the first season of Fargo, and I don't want to call it an abortion. And by the way, I'm not spoiling the first season, and I'll try to hold off on spoilers for the second, because the second season I'm going to recommend it. The first season I'm not going to recommend. The first season of the show is a glorified Mary Sue femcel against a Gary Stu in Billy Bob Thornton. It is not very enjoyable of a season. It spins his wheels, it's too unserious, it's too campy, it's too meta, there's so much wrong with it. There's SJW aspects of it, of every man in the show being a fucking beta male. Every man is either a cripple or a total beta male, or like an obnoxious, incompetent dickhead. Like every man in the show. Other than Billy Bob Thornton, who's the villain. He's the Gary Stu of the show, and that too is not enjoyable. I don't enjoy watching Billy Bob Thornton be a Gary Stu. I don't enjoy watching contrived writing where he can get out of every situation up until the very end where he can't. It's stupid. So the first season of Fargo is not a recommend. It's too unserious. It's too contrived. There's some decent acting by What's-His-Face from Lord of the Rings and Billy Bob Thornton. Outside of that, I don't care about Billy Bob Thornton being a Gary Stu. I don't care about Deaf Hitman from wherever the fuck, from a mob family who is a joke. I mean, fucking Billy Bob Thornton at one point, no spoilers, but goes full Gary Stu. And it's like, okay, this is not enjoyable. This is dumb. Fucking Kay and Peele are in it for some reason as FBI man. It's so dumb. It's, yeah. Aside from some decent acting, it's more bad than good. And I don't care about your glorified Mary Sue femcel. I don't care. I'm not here to talk about that, yo. I'm here to talk about the fucking red-pilled, insane second season. So I haven't finished the second season yet, and maybe it can let me down. But I'm 6 episodes into the second season. I've watched all 6 just today, because I had a case earlier that was very slow. So I was just watching this second season of Fargo. Yo, this is the most red-pilled shit on fucking Earth. Because every woman in the show outside of the state trooper's wife, who's portrayed sympathetically, because she has a lymphoma, so she's dying. She's portrayed in a sympathetic fashion. And if you've watched the first season, she is the mother of the femcel in the first season, so this is a prequel. And the father is the crippled beta male white knight in the first season. But in this show so far, he's not a white knight. He's actually an alpha, solid police officer. He's a solid policeman. And I like watching that. I like watching a solid policeman doing solid police work, trying to piece together what's going on, being honorable, being good, trying to offer people the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't work to his favor, like if you're too kind. But he's a decent character in the second season. And if you look at the different men of the show, there is a decent, range among the characters. Some, characters are portrayed worse than others, but there's at least alphas in this show. There's some white knight betas that are annoying, but there are some alphas finally. And the main character so far, the state officer, the father from the first season, he's still an alpha. He's honorable and overly so, but he's still an alpha. And his character's interesting. He's a solid policeman, and he's doing his job. And he's in a bad situation because his wife is dying. The other man who I'm going to talk about is Dodd, who is the first son of a mob boss, and he is very unsympathetic in this show. He's portrayed as a sociopath with psychopathic tendencies, and he is an outright misogynist. Now, I say that, he's still an alpha, and I appreciate that. Because what's funny about this season that is so different from the first is that every woman outside of the state trooper's wife is portrayed horribly. Every woman in the show is shown to be just on a spectrum of awful. And I'm going to lay that out for you. It's so funny. It's so red-pilled. It's so fucking red-pilled. So let's start from the beginning. The mob boss has a stroke. The first son, Dodd, is then slated to take over because this is standard mob rules in a family. Whoever the most competent son is, even in The Godfather, Fredo had to step aside because Michael was competent and Fredo wasn't. Michael takes charge, even though he's not the first son, because he's the competent son. He's been groomed, he's a killer, so he takes over for the family. Once Marlon Brando strokes out or has a heart attack, whatever happens to him, I don't remember. Dodd is slated to take the spot of his father, because it's shown in the show, Dodd, for his entire lifetime, has been engaged in violence to aid his father in building this family empire. This, trucking or whatever it is that they say that they're engaged in Fargo. Dodd is the rightful replacement for his father once his father has a stroke and is incapacitated totally. He can't even speak. He's like the Commodore in Boardwalk Empire. Same sort of deal. Dodd is also portrayed as being ruthless, violent, bloodthirsty, a bit too much. But he calls his shots, and he calls what's going to happen. He knows at several instances what the right move is. And the thing is that he's portrayed as bloodthirsty, but every time he calls it, he's always been proven right in the show. Every time he says something is going to happen in this situation, we should make this move, he's portrayed as kind of irrational, but, violent. But the fact is, he was right all along. However, what happens is that his arrogant, incompetent mother, his overbearing mother, says, no, even though you've been groomed to take this position, I'm going to take over for the father. I'm going to take over. And the thing is that she is a bureaucrat. She is a eunuch. She is someone that is a numbers N-word, okay? She is someone that her entire position within the family is bureaucratic. That is her position, and that's all she understands. She only understands money. She only understands numbers. She doesn't understand what it takes to actually keep the family in power and to keep money coming in. She's incompetent. She's proven to be incompetent. When tested, she shows that she can anticipate the enemy's moves. Her son can, and she is shown to be arrogant and incompetent. Eventually, despite the fact that she continues to claim that she's in power of the family, her son, Dodd, manipulates her after she tries to manipulate him. He manipulates her, and this is not a spoiler, and he wrestles enough control away so that she is basically claiming she's still in charge, but he's in charge, really. It's kind of like the situation of Tony Soprano and Junior Soprano in The Sopranos, in that Tony manipulates Junior to taking the role of the boss of the family, but he's the one really calling the shots. And it's a similar circumstance currently in the 6th episode. It's not spoilers, because you can guess this is going to happen, because, again, anyone who's ever watched a crime show, and this is at least decent writing from a writing standpoint, a narrative standpoint, the numbers N-word, the bureaucrat, the eunuch, cannot run a mob family. They don't understand. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand what it takes. And this is true for government in general. A middle manager is never a good CEO. From my understanding of business, and I know some entrepreneurs, a bureaucrat, a middle manager, a eunuch is not good at leading a company. They're just not good. They can only manage its decline because they're afraid to take risk. They're afraid to do anything. There's a reason why certain people are rich. It's not all backstabbing and the government and all that. I mean, it does play a part. You can get government contracts. But there are people that have earned their millions of dollars. And the fact is that in this mob situation, the father has built this family, this empire, surrounded by a pool of blood. Let's put it like that. The mother doesn't understand this. And so that is a horrible portrayal. She's shown to be incompetent. In one of the greatest scenes in the show with Everyone Loves Raymond's brother, she proves herself to be incompetent. The son did some stuff to antagonize Kansas City, who's the other family, like, rivaling them in the show. But she proves herself to be incompetent. And from that point, the son can manipulate her. Because, again, she doesn't understand what it takes to run this family. That's one red pill. Is that old women may be good at number crunching, they're not good at running mob families. Even though Dodd is not portrayed is perfect, he's an alpha male. And it's clear he's been groomed for this position. It was his position to take. He should have been in charge of the family based on what's portrayed in the show. He earned that position by helping his father his entire fucking life. He's earned the position. So Dodd should be in charge of the family. The reason I'm talking to you about this is because this is interesting. This is decent writing, unlike the first season. This is what engages me in actually doing this video. Decent writing. So, the next red pill of the show is the worst character in the show, which is the butcher's wife, whose name I can't recall. I can't recall very many of the names of the show outside of a handful of characters that I liked. This woman in the show, and I'm not going to spoil anything, the butcher's wife is the worst character in the show as of episode 6. No spoilers. Worst character in the show. Manipulative, selfish, neurotic. She has a cheap, cunning charm to her. She uses that to manipulate her utterly beta male husband. That's a bad portrayal of the show. But it's not one like in the first season where it's totally irritating. It's actually just fine. She's manipulated this guy. It's a power dynamic, and it's uneven. Fine. I can believe it in terms of the writing. Her portrayal in the show is the worst character. She is dumb. She is easily manipulated herself by and I'm not kidding you, a embodiment of 60s, 70s political lesbian women's empowerment. And I'm not joking. Dyke, utterly manipulative, totally ideological. They could not be portraying women's empowerment in women's lib any worse than in this season. I've never in my life seen a more fucking red-pilled show as to how terrible women's liberation was for certain women. You not getting slapped around and whatever, being abused, that's fine. But you being a totally self-obsessed, self-absorbed, manipulative cunt, which is who the butcher's wife is. Again, should I spoil this? I'll give you one example. It's a spoiler, but not a big one. It's a small spoiler, minor spoiler. She's manipulating her husband. Her husband desperately wants to start a family, desperately wants to have children, okay, with his wife, wants to own a butcher shop, have a family with his wife, just wants to do what a family man does. He's a beta male, whatever. He just wants what any man would want. The wife is leading him on, and it's clear that she's not really attracted to him. She loves him, but she's not really attracted to him. She's manipulating him she's using sex to her advantage, and she knows what she's doing. She has sex with him, and she goes into the bathroom, and she takes birth control. So she is, without her husband's consent, because she's unattracted to him, not willing to have kids with him, but is not willing to tell him. She is so selfish, evil in a sense, that she can't tell her husband that she doesn't want to have kids with him because, honestly, she's not attracted to him. That's what it is. Because she's not attracted to him, she doesn't want to have kids with him. And her excuse for this, like the way in which she appeases her conscience for doing this evil thing, manipulating her husband in this way, even though she should be upfront. If she doesn't want kids, say it. If you love your husband, you should tell your husband that you don't want to have kids. And the fact is that for me, I can't say for everyone, but for me, that's the end of the marriage. There's no way in the first place I would be married to you if you told me up front you don't want to have kids, period. You're not willing to have kids. Then we're not getting married, done. Find some fucking beta male to manipulate. But when it comes to me, if you don't want to have kids, I'm not interested. And that's my preference. It's my right to have that preference. And the only way any relationship's going to work is that both parties are honest about that. The husband, the butcher, is honest. She is not. So I talk about that, minor spoiler, because she uses women's empowerment as a justification for her own conscience for why she's manipulating her husband. She's allowing herself, or is to some degree, it depends on how stupid you think she is pretty dumb. She is using the ideological propaganda by this literal dyke who's trying to cuck the beta. She's literally trying to fuck this blonde woman. It's like her boss or something at a salon. She uses the ideology of the dyke to justify her manipulation of her husband. Because of her series of bad choices, everything outside of the Kansas City mob trying to move into Minnesota, that's the only thing that is not because of her poor choices, the butcher's wife. Everything else in the show, everything spirals out of control because of her bad choices. And again, red-pilled as fuck because she is the worst character in the show. Now, there could be, and I'm not going to spoil anything, she could change. Because I think that a decent writer, it happened with a couple characters in the first season, one way too late, and one where it was a good like twist on an anti-villain villain. Like it was good. I like that aspect. Like I said, Lord of the Rings guy in the first season, not bad. And everyone else is kind of shit. She could redeem herself. There could be a character arc in the making here. I don't know yet because I haven't finished the season. But as of now, she's the worst character in the show. And she, like, again, red-pilled as fuck. Women's empowerment is basically an excuse for women being evil. Holy shit. Wow, did a fucking, like, MGTOW activist or an MRA write this fucking show? Was the writer of the show in the midst of a divorce, like when fucking George Lucas did Temple of Doom? It's insane. Like, it's insane. Okay, you think those first two, the old woman who's incompetent and the fucking manipulative cunt, those are it. No, it doesn't stop there. The other woman I'm going to mention is Dodd's daughter. She is a depiction of the late 60s woman, where She sleeps around. She is an airhead. She smokes weed. She talks about dropping acid. She is a fucking whore.
I get it. You don't have respect for anything. But do you know what a whore's life is?
Come on now.
I'm serious. This is me looking out for you. Some career advice. A whore's life is 5 good years, 5 bad years, and then some half-dick sweat stain grinds you out like a cigarette.
I'm not going to spoil what happens because there is another word I want to call her that starts with a T, but I don't want to spoil anything. And I really, really hope that her arc ends in the way that I want it to, because she is another character in the show that is portrayed so terribly. She's shown to be just like, her father, Dodd, is a misogynist. He's a sociopathic misogynist, but he treats her like shit because, 1, he's a bad guy, but 2, she deserves it. She deserves what she gets. She is utterly, utterly selfish, self-absorbed, like nihilistic in her weakness and uselessness. And she's not portrayed as being totally weak. She's just useless. She is useless to everyone around her, outside of certain people that I don't want to spoil. She is a whore. And I mean that in like the classic, and this is a decent sign of writing. This is decent writing. She is the classic, like, romantic whore, in that she is vengeful and shallow and stupid and useless. She is a liability to those around her. She claims her motivation to be freedom. Her own personal freedom is her, like, the ethos for why she does what she does. Again, like, could not be a worse portrayal of fucking women's liberation. Again, did a fucking MRA write this fucking show? I can't believe the portrayals in this show. And I don't even understand if, like, the writers are conscious of this or not. Like, I want to say they are because of just how unbelievable it is, but they might not be. Like, I can't tell. Like, maybe that's a sign of good writing? I don't know. I can't tell if the writers understand how terribly they are portraying these women, how awful they are as characters, in wanting to hate them as a viewer. The T whore in this show, Dodd's daughter, is the classic depiction of a whore. Frivolous, shallow, and so on. And again, I can't spoil aspects of her character because they are somewhat integral to the story, like the main story. I can't spoil that. But it's like, I can't believe they televised this. Like, again, this is from 2015, a few years ago. I'm surprised that this show wasn't fucking deplatformed. And I'm thinking about watching the 3rd season once I'm done with this one. I fear that the writers are going to go, oh shit, what do we do? And it's going to be a total reversal. It's going to go back to season 1, where all the men are incompetent and all the women are Mary Sues and insufferable. I'm afraid that's going to happen because of how strong the writing is in the 2nd season for showing these characters to be utterly fucking terrible. I've been going on for quite a while, so you can tell that this is interesting, this is provocative, and it is a recommend. Like, it is straight up red-pilled. Look, I could not imagine a worse portrayal of women's liberation. I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine a worse portrayal. It's unbelievable. It is unreal. And it's unlike pretty much, I mean, maybe I've seen a few things other than this in my lifetime, but it's not common. It's not common that you have several female characters in the show that are integral characters to the narrative. They're all portrayed terribly. terribly. And even though some of the men are portrayed terribly, you know, you got the beta male butcher, you got Dodd, the first son, who's a total psychopath. You expect Dodd to be a psychopath. The state trooper is a man's man, at least for now, good cop. And that's what you'd expect. You expect him to be a good cop. And that's fine. It's not mind-blowing. It's what it is, but it works. And that's all you need it to be. You don't need it to be, you know, fucking four-dimensional chess sort of writing. Doesn't need to be overly complex. It's not the nature of Fargo as like a gimmick. Simplicity is key. I have to say that based on from what I watched in the first season, which was unimpressive, I'm surprised by the second season being interesting and just being on a better level of writing than the first. Like, it is simply better written than the first season, just overall. It's rare as a viewer of many things, media-wise. When it comes in fiction, it's rare for me to see this kind of improvement. You know, we're all locked down right now. If you're looking for something interesting to watch, I guess this is just a recommendation to you. That it's rare that I see a show like this that gives women the role of, you got some sympathetic characters, you got some, you know, middling characters that do what they do, they're just there to be there, and then you have three characters in a row, they're all women, that are not portrayed as, like, glorified Mary Sue's, like, oh, I'm a big and strong, empowered black woman, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's so the opposite of that. It is simply that you have an overbearing mother that has no place being the mob boss, and that's how it plays out. It's true to life. You have a completely manipulative cunt who it has basically laid the groundwork for her being killed. I will be surprised if she survives this, because she has just made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, and it is because of her terrible personality. I imagine that eventually she is going to be killed for her poor choices, and she will deserve it. She will deserve it if she does die. You have the whore daughter, who is also setting the stage to be killed. And I hope out of all the characters, she is the one that dies. I hope that is the case. It doesn't need to be graphic or gruesome or gory. Just shot to the head, you know, it falls into a hole. And that is it for her character. You shouldn't and can't trust a whore. Put it like that. I think that's true. And that's why I say it's romantic. It's a Greek tragedy of things. Like, it's ancient fiction, just in modern portrayal. You can't trust a whore. And that's as much as I'll give you. That's as much as I'll give you. It's probably a spoiler right there, and I shouldn't have given it to you. But, like I said, of all the characters that I want to see get that bullet, it's her. Even, you know, with the butcher's wife being awful, she's the worst character in the show, I want the whore to get it. Because she is, in many ways, the worst character, in my view. I don't think she's portrayed as the worst, but in my view, she is the fucking worst. Anyways. There's a recommendation for you. Go watch season 2. I hope this show doesn't blow up in my face where it's like Game of Thrones and it dies by the end. I hope not, because like I said, I'm only 6 episodes in. But by now, I think I'm comfortable to say that it's probably good. It's probably okay. Red pill show. Anyways, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening.